Hear ye, hear ye. Let it be known throughout our fair land that now be time to speaketh on matters in a manner vaguely scientific. Forsooth, I am he that has hitherto and shall hence be known as Derek. Yea, and verily, I doth be joined by yon scientist Jim Holla Clown.
Ha! That was a pretty good holla, right?
Yeah, I thought so. And now make way, for presently arrives the visitant of most esteem. Salutations, good Catherine.
Greetings, good friends.
I'm excited to go to the Ren Fair now.
Oh, this is the show where listeners send in questions to hear our vaguely scientific answers, and who knows, we might even get some of those answers right. But first, it's time for the fun science fact of the day, Jim.
All right. Cold welding is a phenomenon that can happen when two very clean pieces of metal touch each other in a vacuum. When they come into contact, the metal pieces can spontaneously stick together to form one solid piece. This could present problems for spacecraft and is suspected to have played a role in the failure of the high-gain antenna on the Galileo space probe.
You're gonna have to forgive me because I don't have follow-up questions because I don't know what most space things are.
So the antenna on the Galileo space probe was kind of folded up like a flower, and it was supposed to open up, and only half of it opened up. It did not work, and they think it's because while the satellite was cruising to Jupiter, some of the metal in the gears fused together through this cold welding process.
Okay, so on a level of catastrophic, how big was this disaster?
It wasn't huge. They worked around it. It was a little bit tricky, but they managed to use, I think it was like 2 low gain antennas. So it was only about 1/10 the bit rate to send stuff back to Earth, but they got it back. So it all worked out.
Well, that's good. And now they know, and they can future-proof.
Yeah.
Hooray!
But what a weird thought that metal can just become bigger metal when they stick together in space.
It's like, I don't know, I'm picturing, there's like this old video game where you're like it's like Snake. It's like you pick up a bit and then you get bigger. I don't know. I'm on a tangent now.
To me, it actually, speaking of old video games, it would make me think of like Tetris, how the blocks come down individually and then they fuse into one large mass.
Oh, yeah, I could see that.
What a weird analogy that works surprisingly well.
A weird analogy. Well, speaking of weird analogies, I don't know that one worked, but I'm using it anyway.
It's not the worst.
I think we'll probably move on to our first question for the week. And that question is, what constitutes a cat losing one of its 9 lives? What an odd question.
I guess being killed.
Well,
I would argue that it's like being almost killed, but not quite.
Like 1/9 of the way killed?
Like a close call.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the expression kind of implies exactly what Catherine said, a close call. So it's like you have an extra life, you cheated death, basically, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that immediately sort of gets to me, why 9?
Oh, that's a great question.
Why not just say you had a close call, right? Why is it specifically having 9 lives? So that's where I kind of wanted to look at how long cats typically live and divide that into 9 segments.
Mm-hmm.
Which is making it way more complicated than it needs to be, right? I was doing a little bit of research on why we say cats have 9 lives, where that expression comes from, and the answer to that is that we don't actually know, but most sources I was able to find trace it back to ancient Egypt at the latest, where one possible origin is that the Egyptian god Atum Ra would take the form of a cat to visit the underworld. And I guess there is speculation that Atum Ra gave birth to 8 other gods, and so the idea is that those 8 gods plus the original equal 9, so 9 lives. Why that translates to cats is kind of unclear. Ultimately, I was able to find out that in other cultures, they still kind of comment on the fact that cats have a tendency to be very good at surviving and narrowly escaping death. But I guess there are different numbers.
Oh, I actually have some numbers for different cultures. I wonder if I found the same ones as you. I have that Arab and Turkish countries tend to say that cats have 6 lives.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I do not have a reason why. But in Spain and other Spanish-speaking countries, they say 7 lives. And that makes a little bit of sense in the fact that 7 is often considered a good luck number or a magic number. And that tends to be like consistent throughout several cultures too, as the number of 7. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, so I don't know specifically about 6 in that regard, but so 7 is often associated in Abrahamic religions as a holy number. And 9 is in like ancient Egyptian mythology, 9 is a divine number, they call it. So you used magic number and lucky number 7.
Yeah.
So all of these kind of numerology things kind of come together and are very likely sources of that.
That's really interesting.
Yeah. And then I'll continue on through history a little bit more of like references of where this pops up. I was pleased to find that there is in fact a Shakespeare reference to 9 lives in Romeo and Juliet.
I knew that was going to come up. Yeah.
Yep. It's Tybalt and Mercutio during a fight, and Tybalt says, "What wouldst thou have with me?" And Mercutio says, "Good king of cats," which is actually another cultural reference in and of itself. Tybalt is the name of the Prince of Cats in what was at the time a popular medieval beast fable called Reynard the Fox, apparently. But anyway, Mercutio continues with that line, "Good king of cats, I want to take 1 of your 9 lives. I'll take 1, and depending on how you treat me after that, I might beat the other 8 out of you too."
Yep. And so the first thing that I found claimed, because I also discovered that bit of information, the first thing that I saw claimed was that cats having 9 lives comes from Shakespeare, which it does not.
No, much earlier than that, I think, is what I'm finding.
So that's sort of where I was looking, like, for Shakespeare to have included 1 of your 9 lives as a line and give no context for it, I had to say, well, if Shakespeare, quote unquote, invented it, which this claim errantly said that he did, there has to be some other reason. So I was looking into Reynard the Fox to see if there is some reference to the cats having 9 lives in that. And the disclaimer here is this was all a wild goose chase. But what I learned about that specific line is for Mercutio to be calling Tybalt the king of cats, referencing that fable specifically, what he's essentially saying is Tybalt the cat in Reynard the Fox is a rival to the hero, who is a peasant hero in a satirical cycle that would often poke fun at the clergy and the aristocracy at the time. And so what Mercutio is essentially accusing Tybalt of being is not only his enemy, but sort of a backhanded compliment saying that he's equal in combat. He is also very much pointing out, I, Mercutio, am the hero here.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating, because I'm a nerd.
That is interesting, though, and I like that it's like an allusion to something that I certainly don't understand, and is probably far less culturally relevant than it was back in those days.
Right.
Yeah, it's one of those lost bits of context, I suppose.
Yeah. One of the things I was looking into was the idea that cats are very good at escaping death because they are extremely nimble.
Mhm.
And so I was looking at some of the ways that cats sort of like live their lives, basically. And they have this really, really good sense of balance. And, obviously we all sort of are like, okay, cats always land on their feet. And that's true because it's not like 100% true all in every single case, but cats tend to land on their feet because they have a reflex that allows them to sort of rotate their body in midair. And so
Yeah.
to me, I'm thinking, we see them sort of defying death in a lot of cases, but a lot of it, I think, is just because they're doing things that the human body really can't do because our reflexes are designed differently. And so they are able to do things that look really dangerous to us that they're really not having too much trouble with at all.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
found the writing reflex.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a reflex that allows them to orient themselves to land on their feet as they fall.
Mm-hmm.
Another aspect of that are several stories, and I was trying to find a verified source of this because I know that it's very common, and I just couldn't find one that is like documented as true, though I tend to believe them, that a lot of studies have shown that cats can survive falls from like significant heights, like 32 stories
Yeah.
about. And that idea, because the myth, I guess, that I heard, that I don't know if it's verified or not, is that they are able to flay out their bodies and get enough wind resistance to kind of, I guess, muffle their descent.
Mm.
I don't know if that's actually true. It seems unlikely, but that idea of cats can survive anything, like they'll find their ways out of burning buildings, they can fit through super narrow gaps. They're actually good swimmers, despite the fact that, the stereotype is that cats hate water.
Mm-hmm.
It all comes back to Catherine's first point of they have 9 lives is an expression stating they're really good at staying alive.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're a mother or whether you're a brother.
Yeah. But yeah, that's the thing, is that cats are just so ridiculously graceful that I think they make things look more dangerous than they are, or I think they get away with things that we can't.
Definitely.
So that makes me kind of think, going back to kind of a little bit of the joke answer that I gave, that like they have to be 1/9 of the way to death for one of there's a little bit of an idea of wasting your 9 lives in that. So if the myth is that a cat can basically die 9 times, so like die 8 times and then still come back, you're gonna have a varied level of usefulness to that ability, because creatures, like living animals, are super squishy. So what constitutes a cat losing one of its 9 lives if it is literally anything that will kill it?
Mm-hmm.
It does not take a lot.
Yeah.
This topic is upsetting because of all of the discussion of cat death, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I have another thought that's maybe a little bit more lighthearted in a way.
Okay,
and
do it.
I got this from a Garfield. Oh, I don't remember if it was the comic or the TV show or what, but it was from Garfield. And the idea was that instead of cats having like 9 lives and like in their one specific, time here on Earth, and they sort of just lose them through like close shaves or whatever. The idea is that cats are reincarnated 9 times. So in this flashback, it was like Garfield was a saber-toothed tiger at one point, and Garfield was like a cave cat or whatever. I don't know, but it was like this whole ongoing thing of these are the other lives that Garfield has lived in the past. And I think that was kind of an interesting idea. It's not really exactly in the spirit of what we all sort of recognize as 9 lives, but I thought it was a fun twist on that.
That is fun.
That immediately makes me think, what about when they're done with those 9 lives then? And how do we
guess they reach nirvana?
How do we?
Yeah, and aren't there some traditions in that believe in reincarnation that you're like upgraded or downgraded status, and like different types of creatures have different. So that's funny that Garfield, like, I wonder which direction that would be for him.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean, given Garfield's lifestyle, I feel like he's got it real easy right now.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like he's gonna be downgraded in the next life, based on what I know about Garfield.
That's true. Unless this is the last one, and then he's going on to whatever's coming next.
Oh yeah, this could just be his like living in luxury because he's done
Final
with all the
life.
hardship. Yeah.
Garfield will live forever, though.
Garfield will live forever. There is a speaking of the cartoon Garfield, when you said that, the first thing I thought was there's a bit where he's on the fence doing like a stand-up routine, because that was a bit that they used to do in the Garfield cartoon where he would stand on the fence and do like I don't know, performances and stuff, and at one point he's dressed as like a mugger, and he like picks up another cat, or he is acting like he's picked up himself. He says, the mugger says, your money or your 9 lives. And then nobody laughs. And he's like, your money or your 9 lives. Is it like, get it? And I was like, is it just because you're a cat? Is the joke that you're a cat? Because we knew that. My critique on Garfield. I'll be here all week.
I mean, Garfield is certainly not the high canon of cat mythos, but but I think sometimes it's nice to use Garfield as a mirror to reflect our society. And as you can see from this reflection, society ain't doing so hot. So another joke that I thought was really funny actually came from Pokemon. This has nothing to do with anything, but it was Meowth talking to Jessie, and Jessie's like, I can cook us something. And Meowth was like, last time you cooked, it wiped out 8 of my 9 lives. And I was like, that's a great insult, to be honest. Like sometimes
funny.
I think it's just, you know, what if they don't have 9 lives, but it's a really great insult to like each other? Like, oh yeah, well, I was doing hot until this guy came along and took out 7 of my 9 lives over here.
That gets to what I was kind of asking, is like, is it possible? So picture like an action movie sort of context or something here, where does the cat have the superpower to go into danger unconcerned because they know they have other lives left? Or is it possible for something to be so dangerous that it might risk more than one of their lives at a time?
Ooh.
In that situation, if I was this magical cat that knew that I could die 8 times before I'm finally dead, my first few lives, I'd be like, I'm going to go in and do all this stuff and not worry about my safety because it's not a risk at that point. Like, this is just going to be one of my lives.
Maybe jumping off the roof is 1 life, but running across a highway is 3 or something like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at.
So it's like poker where you can ante your lives.
Yeah. So how many of my lives is this going to be?
So then follow-up question. Have you ever met anyone that actually counts their cat's lives?
Oh, interesting.
Because I have not, but I mean, well, not that I know of. I've never asked that question.
I believe that I have, but that's a speculation that, like, I've never actually asked that. If I found out that the specific person did, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Fair enough. So then, follow-up to the follow-up. If a human doesn't see the traumatic event, does it still count as a lost life?
Oh, when a cat dies in the forest, does it actually die?
No one's around to see it. Is it? Oh, it has to be observed. So wait. Oh,
wait. Oh no, it's Schrodinger's cat.
I was just gonna say they're functionally immortal until they are observed.
Oh, I love that.
They live in a state of both alive and dead.
I mean, that makes sense. They sleep all the time.
Oh, how did I miss the Schrodinger? That's
that's
the answer.
How did
right
we all
there.
miss that?
Yeah.
I gotta ask Schrodinger, like, when you do open the box to observe the cat, is that its first life that kills it, or is it? That's why quantum mechanics is so hard to figure out.
Yeah, and also, like, what if the what if you just keep opening the box and it's just alive 8 times because it's just giving up its lives that should have been dying?
It should have been dying. It's alive. This cat's alive. Well, it's 1 down, 8 to go, right? Yeah, that's why Schrodinger's cat, that thought experiment was flawed, specifically because of the fact that cats have 9 lives.
Mm-hmm.
Not for any of the other reasons.
Another thing I thought would be kind of fun to bring up is just the idea that maybe cats are like Time Lords, and so they can be mortally injured and then they regenerate into like a new cat body. Now, this only works for feral cats because if you have a cat at home, then you can see what they're up to. And so obviously this doesn't work for them. But when they're in the wild, maybe, you see a gray cat the one day and you see an orange cat in the same spot the next day. It's because it died and regenerated into a new body that looks different.
Yeah. See, I knew you were going to bring up Time Lords eventually,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I have my counter argument that if cats were Time Lords, they wouldn't have 9 lives. They'd just claim to have 9 lives until the writers ran out of ideas.
To be fair, the Doctor had 13 lives and was about to beef it, and then the Time Lords were able to give, because this is a known fact of the show, is that Time Lords can gift regenerations to other Time Lords. And so he was going to die, and then they gave him more, which is probably good for him. So the one thing I think is most entertaining about this is that it's just one of those things that we sort of talk about and no one has really ever looked, and like that's one of the things we just did was like, what's the origin of this myth? And I think it's really fun that you can say, oh, cats have 9 lives, and basically everybody, at least in the United States, is gonna be like, oh yeah, I understand that reference, and we don't really stop to think about why that is. So this was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
well,
definitely.
I mean, to your point, I genuinely thought I was going to find a more concrete answer about where that expression comes from. So it was kind of interesting to me to find out that we really don't know the origin of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Older than time itself.
Yeah, for real. The only other thing I'll add is I did find, in fact, some studies of like veterinarian clinics that studied what has, I guess, come to known as high-rise syndrome, when cats have fallen off of buildings that are between 2 and 32 stories tall. And over 90% of the time of those cats studied, they survive, oftentimes with various injuries. And some of these studies like document the most common types of injuries. But the overwhelming majority survive, which is just wild. And also cool that it's documented in that way. And another thing that I came across that's worth a watch is there's a viral TikTok of a cat in a stadium, and kind of the upper level of the stadium, the cat is dangling. I don't know how it got up there. I assume from being on the top level, and it kind of climbed over the railing and is dangling from the top level of the stadium, and all the people in the stadium start to see this cat. So you hear like hubbub. The entire stadium is then turning to this cat. It's like, oh no, like people don't know what to do. Nobody can reach it. And somebody like unfurls this flag like underneath, and eventually the cat falls, and you hear just the whole stadium. And there's like a moment, and then somebody picks the cat up over their head, and the whole stadium erupts and cheers.
That's awesome.
It took me as long to describe that as it does to actually watch it. So just if you probably Google it, you can find it. It was entertaining for sure.
You can even watch it while Catherine describes it, and there's like audio commentary that goes along with the video. That's the
Yeah, and you can track which details I exaggerated or got incorrect.
I choose to believe that you narrated it just like exactly accurate. I don't know.
I did just watch it today in preparation for this, so it's pretty recent in my mind, but I did also only watch it one time. So
I think it's interesting watching videos of, disclaimer, because I know this is an internet trend. I don't really watch a lot of cat videos on the internet, but I have seen a few videos of cats like climbing things. I like the videos showing off how kind of creative they can be at problem solving, of how to jump over certain gaps or how to get to places that we just like I've watched a cat climb sideways with just its forelegs, like somebody shimmying along the side of a cliff. And that's just not something I would expect them to do, but I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, with our first question out of the way, I think it's time to tackle a middle segment we have. So now it's time for
Today in Science History.
On July 2nd, 1900, aviation history was made with the maiden flight of the world's first successful rigid airship, the Zeppelin LZ-1. Designed by Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin, this massive airship took to the skies over Lake Constance in southern Germany. Measuring 420 feet long and powered by two 15-horsepower Daimler engines, the LZ-1 was a marvel of engineering for its time. However, the LZ-1's aluminum framework flexed more than expected during the flight. The engines were not powerful enough to propel a structure that big, which resulted in sluggish and imprecise handling, and furthermore, the airship used hydrogen gas cells for lift, and early designs like the LZ-1 often suffered from minor leaks or inadequate pressure control. Overall, the flight only lasted 18 minutes. Though this aeronautic debut did reveal these technical flaws, it also proved that controlled, powered flight in a large airship was possible. Unlike earlier balloons, the rigid framework on the Zeppelin, while not perfect, laid the groundwork for future airships, which would go on to be used in reconnaissance, passenger travel, and even luxury transatlantic voyages. Also, using hydrogen gas would prove to be hazardous rather famously about 37 years later.
I've no idea what you're talking about. Never heard of it.
If you're curious, you can look that up. It's going to be easy to find. Hydrogen gas is flammable.
Yes.
Whereas helium is inert.
Yeah. And they're fun, both.
Both of them.
But for very different reasons.
Yeah.
It's better to inhale helium.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually bad to inhale helium for the reason that I should start out by saying it's less dense than air.
So you might float away?
No, you might just suffocate. So actually, the really big problem with inhaling helium is that our bodies don't actually detect when they are low on oxygen. They detect when they are high on carbon dioxide. And so if you keep breathing helium, you won't know that you're suffocating. And this is the same problem with something called nitrogen narcosis, too. If it's like a pure nitrogen environment, you won't realize it until you die.
Yeah.
Wow.
I remember that. I just want to say I had to laugh with Catherine coming in with this nice whimsical, oh, you might float away and then Jim or suffocate.
Yeah.
And tonal
I would
shift.
prefer to float away than suffocate, but maybe that's a me thing.
Take your pick.
Try fizzy lifting drinks. They're good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we do have one more question to tackle this episode. So I think without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and read that to everyone, and then we can talk about it, because that's the format of the show. Question 2 this week. Why does food taste different when reheated in a microwave compared to an oven?
I think this is a very interesting question because it's one of those ones that has multiple different answers to it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And one of the big ones that we should talk about first, because it's not really true, is the idea that like microwaves are actually irradiating our food and like killing off nutrients and things like that, because they don't.
I didn't think about that, but that is worth mentioning. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not radiation.
Right. I mean, it's electromagnetic radiation, but it's not it's not like plutonium.
I think it's interesting, I again, to stall, but I know Jim and I have talked about this before, because I was curious one day, because the thing that I still have trouble wrapping my mind around is that the door of a microwave oven has holes in it. Because the microwaves are the waves that are micro are too big to fit through the holes. Is that correct?
It's a Faraday cage. Yeah. I mean, it's designed to keep the microwaves in. So as long as you don't put a hole in the door of your microwave, then they won't get out at all.
Okay. Yeah. And so I still like just have trouble wrapping my mind around that because microwaves are invisible and therefore must be magic. I don't know. But I remember being curious what would happen if you ran a microwave without the door. Obviously the suggestion is, you'd get cancer or something. And what I learned is that really it would probably cause some like singeing and maybe a fire, but not really a lot.
Yeah.
So that was fascinating to me.
Yeah, like the way they've discovered that microwaves would heat up food was that a scientist had a chocolate bar in his pocket and stood too close to a magnetron, and the chocolate bar melted, and he sort of realized that, oh, this thing is what melted my chocolate.
Oh, wow.
I think that was a guess the breakthrough one time.
I think
this
so.
Show.
Yeah.
That's neat.
Interesting.
From what I have been finding, both looking at some interwebs resources as well as just from personal experience, because I have heated a lot of food in both ovens and microwaves. It's mostly a texture thing. And there's some taste differences to be had, but it seems as if the texture is the biggest thing between food result in a microwave versus an oven. They use different methods of heating. Ovens use dry heat, and it enables, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this right. Is it called the Maillard reaction?
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
It's either that or like Maillard reaction. I can't remember, but I think you're saying it right. So
Maillard, something like that. It's spelled Maillard. Reaction. And that's what happens in ovens. Proteins and sugars, it browns crusts and makes things crispier because it's using dry heat.
Yeah.
Whereas microwaves, it heats water molecules internally. So that's why if you heat like pizza in the microwave, it becomes more soggy. Whereas if you heat it in the oven, it retains a little bit more of that crispy crust.
And this is not to be confused with the Maillard reaction, which is when it starts quacking and gets startled and flies away.
Exactly.
Yeah, if your pizza does that, then you might not have put it in a microwave. You might have put it in something else.
Yeah.
Another thing on that same kind of vein that I learned is there's, I don't know if it has a name like the Maillard reaction does, but especially in meats, and this is common with like hot dogs or something. I have a whole rant about hot dogs here, but people describe this, if you heat up hot dogs in a microwave, it has like a warmed flavor rather than a cooked flavor. It doesn't have like any sort of singe or browning, and this is due to I guess lipid oxidation, where the fat in the meat breaks down, which produces chemicals we find undesirable to taste. I guess that doesn't happen in an oven. But so here's my rant about hot dogs. I have a rant about hot dogs and a rant about eggs today for you. The hot dog rant is I staunchly refuse to eat hot dogs if they are cooked in a microwave because I think they taste bad. But I also, when I cook hot dogs in an oven, find that I only want like one hot dog, and hot dogs on a grill, it's kind of the same. I only really want one hot dog. And what I realized is, in preparing for this question and reading all this, why is cooking stuff in a microwave undesirable or produce an undesirable taste? I don't know if I'm a good sample size because I think I'm just not a big fan of hot dogs.
Okay.
That's the conclusion I came to.
I think that's very interesting because I actually prefer hot dogs in the microwave because I feel like the way that they burn. It's weird. I like them on the grill or in the microwave, not in the oven or on the top of the stove. But
Fascinating.
yeah,
Okay.
I don't know why. Like, I wouldn't dislike them, and I certainly would still eat them because I like a good hot dog. But like, if I had to choose between the four, I think it would go microwave, grill, oven, and then stovetop. And I
Yeah.
just think that's fascinating.
Yeah, we're just like completely split on that. That's weird.
Yeah.
Cool.
But again, I
Um,
would eat any hot dog. They're all pretty good.
The other thing I mentioned was eggs, and this isn't exactly an egg rant, I suppose, but in looking at let me just reread the wording of the question. Why does food taste different when reheated in a microwave compared to an oven? My first answer before I did any research was because it's a different method of cooking. And then I kind of realized, oh, but that answer doesn't explain anything. But it made me think of all the different ways you can prepare eggs and how eggs are vastly different depending on cooking style. But essentially, they're still the same thing. And that comes down a lot to, like, if you fry an egg, not only is it going to be a little bit crispy, but it's also probably going to have some butter or oil flavor in there. If you scramble eggs, they're going to be a bit more bland most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Poaching eggs is, I feel like, the most authentic just egg cooking method. The ultimate conclusion I'm trying to get to here is, like, that's true of kind of anything. That's true of like a steak, if you do in like a sous vide where it cooks the whole interior of the steak evenly but doesn't really sear it. So I think it's fascinating that like so many people think about microwave specifically being a different texture, where it's just like, really, there are so many different cooking methods that all produce a very different outcome.
Yeah. And one of the things I was looking at was the fact that microwaves heat things up kind of from the inside out, whereas you throw it in the oven or in a stovetop or really any other form of cooking, and it's going to cook it from the outside in, which
Yeah.
is liable to give you some different textures, exactly like Catherine said, too.
Yeah.
There's a good video of it came out fairly recently, but the YouTube channel Stuff Made Here, which I'm always a fan of, though they don't release videos all that often, where they took I think it was like a Think Geek thing, but there's a brownie tray that has a very narrow maze-like structure, and the idea is
the edge brownie tray. I remember that.
Yeah, the edge. And so he tried to make how to cook brownies with no edges. And spoiler warning for that video, I guess. What he ultimately discovered was trying to cook from the interior was the only way to kind of stop that browning hardening of the edges. And so he developed this tray, and I don't know how well it worked, but he developed this tray with basically metal spikes that look kind of like, I don't know, the bottom of a tennis shoe or a bottom of a golf shoe or whatever. And so the idea is those metal spikes heat up and cook the brownie not only from the outside in, but also the inside out. And I don't know how well it works, but that's what that made me think of.
That's really interesting.
Huh. I have also found that it seems like there is a name for the microwave phenomenon that kind of changes the taste specifically of meats. And I'm seeing people call it warmed over flavor. And it's that like funky taste when reheating things in the microwave, specifically meats, because it is because of a certain kind of polyunsaturated fatty acids being deteriorated. I find this funny because I'm vegetarian, so I don't eat meat. So I don't really experience the taste side of things in the microwave all that often, to be honest. I think that's probably why my first citation was more about the texture than the taste. But after hearing you all talk about the hot dogs and the eggs and finding this about warmed over flavor, it must be with certain foods having certain chemical makeups more pronounced in its taste as well.
Yeah.
Well, if it's going to be like fatty substances, that would make sense that doesn't really appear in a vegetarian food.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also not eat eggs?
No, I do eat eggs.
Okay.
I feel like I rarely reheat eggs in the microwave, though.
That makes sense.
But I do kind of see what you're talking about.
So another thing that I kind of tried to make a list for here, and Jim's response to the hot dog thing was interesting. Well, so now we can add Catherine's perspective to this. There's two questions here. The first question was going to be, are there any foods that you prefer specifically in the microwave?
Oh, okay.
But then to add Catherine's perspective, because I think I knew you were a vegetarian, but it slipped my mind. What is generally your opinion in terms of microwave versus other forms of, I guess, specifically reheating, considering the lack of meat intake?
I feel like in general, for me, it's more about time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We recently got a contraption that I'm a big fan of. It's like a little countertop oven that's kind of like a toaster oven, but it also has air fryer qualities.
Oh.
Another like form of cooking, which I think has become very popular over the last several years. And I guess warms food, heats food a little bit differently, even more so than just a regular oven, because it emphasizes even more that crispiness factor.
Yeah.
But I really do like that little oven a lot, because like reheating things, if I'm looking for that crispiness texture factor or want something reheated, making it feel a little more like a fresh cooked dish as opposed to just reheated in the microwave, that is nice because it is quicker and uses, I imagine, a little bit less energy than the full oven would.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I was kind of thinking about was the fact that a lot of the foods that a lot of people reheat in the microwave, and that's the key. What I was going to say is a lot of foods that people put in the microwave in the first place are leftovers. And so they are already not going to taste as fresh as they were the moment you got them. So, for instance, I have a pizza that I've been reheating the slices of, and they taste pretty good still. Like I will say that whatever my microwave does, I just push the button and hit go, but it doesn't seem to be as bad as some of the microwaves I've owned in the past. But
yeah.
I mean, a pizza slice is not going to be as great as it was, the moment that it came to your house. And I think, yeah, like something like an air fryer or a toaster oven or an oven might do a better job, but I have 30 seconds. And I can go from no pizza to yes pizza in 30 seconds, and that is worth the little bit of downgrading of the flavor, for me at least.
I think pizza is an interesting example because, just from my own anecdotal experience, I prefer cold pizza to reheated pizza. And it depends on the pizza, right? Some pizza, if it's cold, it's just not good. But I don't mind if it's leftover pizza. I'm like, yeah, cold day 2 pizza.
I don't mind it
here
either.
for it. Okay. And this grates on people. I've noticed that I'll like take a piece of leftover pizza out of the fridge and start eating it, and people have to tell me, you can heat that up.
Yes, like, I have gotten that before as well.
I found a kindred soul finally. And I was like, the contrarian in me is always like, oh, I can.
I don't really mind cold pizza too much, but the pizza that I have is buffalo chicken pizza, and I feel like I like it that particular flavor better warm.
Sure, and it depends on the but so to expand on that, I have found that when I do have a slice of pizza that I taste cold and I'm like, oh, I guess this one isn't a good cold pizza, I much prefer wrapping it in aluminum foil and putting it in the oven. And that it still doesn't taste like fresh pizza, but it's different than the microwave, and that would be my preference.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, reheating something like that in the oven would be more ideal. One of the things I was reading, though, is that a lot of the problems that you might run into is a matter of dehydration. And so if you put like a little bit of water, like in a little bowl or something, or like put a wet paper towel over top of something, that can stop a lot of the dehydration from happening. And
Yeah.
so you might not lose as much of that texture / flavor when you reheat it in the microwave.
Yeah, and because microwaves use heat by warming water molecules too, it's less likely to dry out than as opposed to in the oven. Sometimes things dry out
Yeah.
more easily. The other thing I found interesting, and I think you maybe referenced a myth about this at the beginning,
Okay.
Jim, was that in some instances, reheating in the microwave, especially among certain vegetables, actually retains more nutrients than reheating in an oven.
Oh, interesting.
Just because of length of time, because a microwave is quicker, there's less time for certain molecules to heat up and degrade or break down. And just the heating method as well.
That's
I thought
awesome.
that was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say that I always get those bags of frozen vegetables that you just pop in the microwave for like 5 minutes. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think those taste better than most of the fresh vegetables I've ever had.
Yeah. Okay, so
Steam
this
fresh.
actually is a myth that I can very much speak to, is in terms of nutrients, fresh versus canned versus frozen vegetables. If you're looking for nutrients from vegetables, they're all pretty much equally valid. And in some cases, frozen retains even more nutrients than fresh because they're frozen at their peak freshness.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're getting your vegetables from the grocery store that have been being shipped around and traveled for 2 weeks, they're already past your peak freshness and therefore have already lost some of their nutrient density.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've also heard a big argument, which I'm pretty sure has been debunked, that eating fresh vegetables as opposed to cooked vegetables, people argue that the more cooking you do to a vegetable, the less nutrients there is. And we have found that that's not true, because like cooking vegetables can kind of activate and unlock some nutrients that we don't really process in our bodies if they're raw.
That's interesting.
I think it does work both ways, depending on the exact like vitamin or mineral we're talking about. Some some cooking like helps unlock them, for lack of a better term. And in some situations it does like degrade more of those nutrients. Yeah.
It depends on what you want to get out of the vegetable, and that also speaks to like cooked things taste different than raw things, and that's because there's a different chemical composition there.
Right. As a side note, ever since I've had the frozen vegetables in the bags, I don't really like canned vegetables at all anymore.
Okay. I will use canned vegetables if I'm doing something like a stir fry dish or something that I'm going to add a bunch of stuff to.
Yeah.
Then I'm not going to do the steamed. This is entirely specific to me, though, so it's not super helpful.
I mean, that makes sense to me. Like, if you're using them as an ingredient in something, as opposed to, like, just eating vegetables as, like, a side.
Yeah.
Right.
I like doing the whole get all the fresh vegetables and chop them up and do a big, it takes me 4 hours to cook dinner, and that's what I did today.
Oh, nice.
That is fun to do. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy that aspect of it. I usually just don't have time to do that.
Well, same, but like, yeah, that's
same. Yeah.
So that's interesting to the point you just made, Catherine. That is, the frozen vegetables are technically going to be healthier, and I'm like, my inclination is to, if I'm doing all this prep work, to go and splurge and get all fresh stuff, and maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe I can do more research into this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like anything. There's trade-offs in any way, right? Like, especially if you're sourcing from like a farm that's local and you've just, gotten it 2 days after it was picked. Like, talk about like peak nutrition there. Plus, also, you're probably getting less preservatives or pesticides or whatever. If you know where your food is coming from, not necessarily, but there's always a gajillion trade-offs. But I feel like what I think is that if you're taking effort to eat fruits and veggies, like, do it however you can get them, because the majority of people just don't eat enough.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just had a long conversation with my brother a couple days ago about exercise habits, which this is only tangentially related, but the idea of like having a whole exercise routine that you're never going to do is going to be less beneficial to you than just going for a walk. Because the best exercise routine is the one that you do.
Yeah. And therefore the one that you like or can fit into your routine and make a habit. Yeah.
Right.
Same thing with foods. Like if you hate Brussels sprouts, well, don't eat Brussels sprouts. Eat asparagus instead, or,
Yeah. I like both of those things.
Same. Although Brussels sprouts are one of those foods that greatly depends on how you cook them.
Okay.
I feel as if Brussels sprouts can be pretty gross, but if you go to like, I don't know, some restaurants and breweries and stuff, I feel like have really nailed the crispy Brussels sprout.
Okay.
I feel like they're getting more popular. They used to be the sort of the butt of everyone's jokes, and now people are like, hey, it's Brussels sprout time.
Yeah, I think people realized that if you like heat them in the oven as opposed to like boiling Brussels sprouts, they're significantly better.
Mm-hmm. And that leads right back to that, what was that, the Maillard reaction?
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Maillarding all over those Brussels sprouts.
Yes, burn
Maillard.
things.
Yeah.
I like a little crisp around a lot of the food I eat, so.
Definitely.
I think Maillarding all over those Brussels sprouts is a good place to put a button on this conversation, I think. All right, listeners. Well, let us know how many times can you heat Brussels sprouts in the microwave before they run out of their 9 lives. Yeah, I don't know. I never know.
You
That's
never
the thing.
know.
I never know. But if you, the listeners, have any thoughts on that, or what I don't know, or anything else, anything you want to tell us, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com, or you can comment on our blog, or you can like us on Facebook, or you can comment on our YouTube feed. Hey, Jim, where do we get all these wacky questions?
We get them from you, the listener. And if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Yeah, whether they like microwaved hot dogs or grilled hot dogs.
Yeah, I mean, hot dogs are just hot dogs, so.
Or oven cooked or air fried.
Oh, yeah.
Or raw or deep fried.
My grandmother used to eat hot dogs just like out of the package.
They're just bologna. They're just
I
like
mean, they are cooked, technically, right?
Yeah. And I used to do it with her, and it seemed so normal at the time. And now looking back on it, it's like, I don't know if anyone else does that, but they weren't bad.
Was that like your special treat at Grandma's house?
No, it was just a thing she did. And I was like, well, I want to do it too, because I like hot dogs, and they're not bad. Like an uncooked hot dog, even if it's cold, is fine. But it's like, thinking back on it, who does that? I don't know. But anyway, our vaguely musical intro was composed by Anthony Pizzelli, and don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. It's time to redo your wardrobe for the summer, so go spend a bunch of money there.
You know what season it is, Jim?
Oh?
It's skateboard season.
That's true. It has rolled over, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. We've rolled over to skateboard season, so.
Thank you to Catherine for coming and talking to us again.
Thank you for having me. It's always such fun.
Yay! And for Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
And I'm Catherine.
And fare thee well, good listeners.
Toodaloo, everyone.
Bye.
He's a scientist. He's doing science. Now somebody stop him.